What is going on, my YouTube friends? And just like that, here's foam. So foam is actually the backing that you see on seats. It's called foam because you sew through it. There's actually like a material backing here, like a muslin backing or something, or scrim backing they call it. And what it is just a material on one side and foam on the other side. And the reason it's there is if you put your piece on this side, right, on the material side, and you sew through, your stitching is going to grab the soft side and rip right through basically until it's just that scrim backing. If you put it through on this side like you're supposed to, and then you stitch through it, you're grabbing onto the material. Now the material is pulling in and sucking in, and it's going to give you some depth and dimension. So foam does a lot of things aside from just that. It makes seats look better. It hides any imperfections, like, because foam, when you have a foam that's injection molded, when you pull it apart, they'll have parting lines. So sometimes you'll have like a hard edge somewhere, and the foam kind of hides that stuff. And it always makes the seat look a little better. And there's different reasons, different foams, different like reasons why you would use what. Most commonly, you have 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, and 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 3/4 inch. For us, we almost always use 1/4 and 1/2. Some stuff I'll use the 1/8 inch. The 1/8 inch is nice because it's not going to give you depth like a graphic, but it kind of backs the material and gives it a little more professionalness. So sometimes I like to use that. Most commonly on a car seat, you're going to use 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch, and predominantly 1/2 inch because the top surfaces are, rule of thumb, usually top surfaces are 1/2 inch, sides are 1/4 inch. So based off of the dimensions of it, you usually use more 1/2 inch foam than you would 1/4 inch foam. If you're patterning to be exactly like the factory, you just look underneath it. You see this, you can see the edge. You go, okay, that has 1/2 inch foam, and you just duplicate that and you're good. And then your pattern will fit. A lot of times what we'll do is on the sides of the seats, they don't have, like the factory ones don't have, well, that one does. That has it, and this one has it. So these both actually have 1/4 inch foam, which is great. Sometimes you get panels that don't have it. This isn't back. This is just a cheaper material that has the material on the bottom side of it, on the cloth. You can look at it and see. So a lot of times I'll put the 1/4 inch on the sides just because it cleans it up and makes it look better. Gives it a little bit more of a shelf life too, where you don't have to worry about the seat peeling. One thing you do have to take into consideration is if the seat doesn't have foam and you start adding 1/2 inch foam or 1/4 inch foam, you're going to have to adjust your pattern accordingly, because now, you know, there's a old saying, something about a sphere. Well, it's not really a saying, but if you took a sphere and you wrapped a piece of 1/16 inch material around it, it might be, say it's 6 inches. And then you back that material with a 1/4 inch, now it's going to be 17 inches. And then if you do it with a 1/2 inch, it's going to be 19 inches. So it actually grows a lot from the outer, and which means that if you took your original pattern that was patterned for the seat without foam, and then you added it, you basically just made it a 1/2 inch taller, 1/2 inch wider here, 1/2 inch and a 1/2 inch is an inch bigger, 1/2 inch and a 1/2 inch is an inch bigger. So you really have to change your pattern at that point. That's why a lot of people don't adjust it and they get scared because they don't want to have to start thinking, oh, if I add this to this, is this going to fit? I usually go, okay, if I add it, is it going to pull it tighter and make it look better? Or is it going to pull it so tight it looks distorted? So there's stuff that you have to think about. Also with foams, you have to think about is some of our suppliers are very inconsistent with our foam. Like this one showed up and it's very soft. I actually prefer the firm foam. I don't like the soft foam. I know there's cases for everything. I just find the softer foam, a lot of times when you use it, if you're not careful, it could look a little sloppier than if you did use the firm stuff. Some people say their butts are so sensitive they could tell the difference between the firmness. It's hard to believe, but anyway, so we're going to go through now, and we're basically, I'm going to show you how to, we're going to laminate the material to the foam, right? This is another controversy in the upholstery business. You know, we have a lot of controversies in upholstery. You know, it's a very cutthroat business. I always cut my foam bigger. I know it's kind of a waste sometimes because we have to trim it, but I'd rather cut it a little bigger, put it on, and not have it too small than have it too small. One of the controversies is some people say glue it or don't glue it, right? If you glue a panel, like a side panel that gets a lot of traffic and it moves and squishes, and say it gets hot, now the glue is going to get soft, you're going to get in the car and it can move the material around and it could kink to itself, it could not look good. And then when it dries, it's really hard, if not impossible, to fix. You know, a lot of people say they like to sew around the edges, not glue it. So if you put this on and there's, say, a wrinkle here, you could cut the threads out, pull it, and then let it relax and get away and go away. On some high-end vehicles, I definitely would do that. I would not glue everything because you want to have the ability to make sure there's no wrinkles and pull it. And if you have to repair something, have it repairable. On a standard vehicle, the rule of thumb is always you glue the seating surfaces and don't glue the sides. You know, you can do, some people do, and I do it on occasion, is glue the outer inch of the material, stick it on there, this way it stays there, and then you can stitch around it, and then you don't have to worry about it because the middle is actually free floated. And there are some cases where you get a seat on the side, you pull it down and you get this wrinkle and you can't get it out, so you'd want to cut it and pull it down there. This all comes from years of experience and learning and trial and error and doing it, and every seat is different. Everybody does it a different way. And for us, like I said, top surface in the center is definitely getting glued. The side surfaces we're going to glue lightly, just enough to hold it in place like a light tack, and then we will do that. So let's get to it. Oh, now one other thing is, one of the big things with foam and material is, so this one's getting a single stitch down the middle of it, so I'm not really worried about the size shrinking. But if you were to say put diamonds in this or a lot of pleats, what ends up happening is every time you stitch it, it goes down and shrinks the pattern. So a lot of times what you'll do is make your piece oversized, do all your stitching, and then put your pattern on top of that, and then pattern it. Because if you were to get it to the exact size like I just did here, and then put a bunch of stitching in it, this panel could actually shrink definitely a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, an inch. Depends how many pleats, because for every top stitch pleat you put in here, it's going to shrink about 1/16 of an inch. So if you do 10 of them, it adds up. So same thing. It's like if you do a huge 1.5 inch foam and it goes down a 1/2 inch, and you do that 5 times, you just got 2.5 inches smaller pattern. So you really got to be careful. With the 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch foam, you don't have to, well, 1/8 inch you don't have to worry about it all. 1/4 inch it does, but it's a lot slighter. The 1/4 inch just doesn't have the big pleat, the puffiness, that nice dip that a lot of people like. However, the 1/4 inch allows for you to make a really tighter, cleaner, crisper, better looking, more high-end product. So like a lot of our motorcycle seats, we only use 1/4 inch. We used to use 1/2 inch years ago. 20 years ago, I used 1/2 inch, but mainly to hide all the crappy mistakes that I made. But then as you get better, you start doing 1/4 inch because you could do a tighter, better stitching and do nice work. All the high-end seats are like that. The super high-end seats, sometimes you'll do your foam so perfect, you don't do any foam. And that's a whole different look and a whole different game, which we are going to get into. So now I'm going to cut all these out, and then I'll show you how to sew them. Okay, so I have all these pieces, and you see I just went through and put foam behind them, bigger. We're going to go actually glue them on, laminate it. I'll show you how we do that. What's funny is doing the videos is tough because I want to show you stuff. I don't want to drag it on too long, but it looks a lot quicker than it is, because when you go through and you have to cut all this stuff out and do all this, now we have to go laminate it, and we'll bring it and trim it. The time is actually way more than you at home actually realize. If you're doing it at home, it's a fun hobby to do. It's really fun and creative and great, and like you end up with a really cool product or something custom that you built. And I think our country needs more hands-on appreciation, to take your time to realize it, because what tradesmen do is a lot more difficult than most people would expect. Okay, so I just went through and took our pieces and just sprayed a nice even coat of contact adhesive on there. So there's a couple of different things. So we get a lot of questions on foam and glues. And foam and glues are the two toughest things, because it's not the easiest to ship foam. So a lot of places, a lot of times you'll try to find something local to you, and it seems like a lot of the upholstery stores are going out of business. And honestly, some of the prices at the upholstery stores of foam is insane. A lot of us just buy wholesale, and these places don't sell direct to the public. So it's tough for foam, and it's tough for adhesive, because like in Connecticut, it's against the law to drive, I think it still is, to drive over the state line into Connecticut with the adhesive that we use. So it's kind of a nightmare for us. So those are the two topics that are going to be tough, because there's places that sell foam online and you're going to have to deal with them, but there's not a lot, and there's not a lot of places that sell the adhesive. Now, you can go to like a Home Depot or Lowe's. They do have contact adhesive, and it does work. It's okay. It's just not going to bond as good, and when it gets hot, it's going to delaminate. You know, so that's the tough part. Is it took a lot for us to find the right chemical makeup for the glues that we use, because even some of the professional grade upholstery glues, if they're in the sun a lot, they actually get hot and then they loosen up. And we've had one time where, actually we've had a couple times over the last 30 years, maybe 2 or 3 times, that the glue actually heated up and then dripped. and it was a defect, and they warranty it, but they give you the new glue, but they don't give you all the labor of building all the stuff you did. So it's kind of a tough thing for us to do. What I just did is I'm gonna talk, so if I have the gun going, it's gonna be really loud, but I take the spray gun, I just choke it up halfway. So on a old-fashioned siphon feed spray gun like this, you pull the trigger back a little bit and just air comes out. You pull it more and fluid comes out. If you pull it all the way, all the fluid comes, or a lot of fluid comes out. So what I do is I pull the air and then I just a little bit. I just pull it back just a slight bit so you get a nice fan and it lays out really even. I always go a little wetter with the glue when I need it because a lot of people will go and put it on really light like they're scared, bond it together, and then it delaminates. So with contact adhesive, when you spray it on, now this is wrong because I argued with the guy who makes it. What they say is you wet this surface heavily, and so you wet the soap foam heavily, then you'd wet the material backside heavily, let it completely dry, and then you put it together. I call BS. I've been doing this since I was 17 years old. I find the best thing is you get it a nice, if you put it too wet, you have this gooey, nasty crap on there. So you get a nice, even coat, slightly wet, let it dry to the point where it's like tacky, and then you can bond most things together. Some things that are going to be a challenge, what I do is I wet it, both surfaces, let them dry, and then I do a real light tack coat just to reactivate it, and then I stick it, and then it bonds really good. Everybody has their opinion. Like I said, when I talked to the guy the chemist who makes the stuff, he told me I was wrong. Yet when I do it his way, it doesn't work. So it just goes to show that there's more than one way to skin a cat. So I just went through, laminated this, so then you can see what we're gonna do is make sure your edges are good, everything's nice and level. Before you glue it, it's no different than doing body. If you're painting a car, you don't want dirt or dust in the paint. When you're gluing this, you don't want dirt or dust to get behind this because trust me, if you pull this tight, one little nib's gonna show and then it looks horrible. What I do is I do this, make sure it looks nice. We got a nice flat panel. I'm gonna go through and trim it. I wanna trim all the soap foam off of it. Now there's a cool tool which I will be buying. I talked to one of the guys like 3 years ago. I wanted to buy it, and you actually stick your material in there and it trims it and it binds the edge at the same time. I cannot wait to get that thing. It's like I have a laundry list of items I want to get, but unfortunately running a business through COVID wasn't the funnest. And dealing with shitty employees was definitely not the funnest. Here we go. Now, I'm gonna go through and do that to all the pieces, and I won't bore you to death with it, and we'll move to the next step. Now we have all these pieces with soap foam laminated to them.